There is a particular kind of guilt that settles in quietly, without announcement. It appears not when you do something wrong, but when you notice a small wanting rise inside you. A thought that says there could be more space, more depth, more honesty, more life than the shape you are currently living. The guilt doesn't arrive as panic or fear. It arrives as restraint, as a subtle tightening, as a sense that even noticing this desire might already be asking too much. This feeling often doesn't come with clear reasons. You may have what looks like enough, stability, function, a life that holds together. And because nothing is obviously missing, the desire itself begins to feel inappropriate, ungrateful, excessive, as if wanting more somehow cancels out appreciation for what already exists. No, the guilt doesn't argue loudly. It simply suggests that you should be quieter inside, smaller with your hopes, more contained. This response didn't form out of selfishness. It formed out of awareness. It's out of noticing, early on, what wanting could cost. Perhaps you learned that desire created pressure, that asking for more led to disappointment, conflict, or withdrawal. That expressing dissatisfaction made you seem difficult, dramatic, or ungrateful. Over time, wanting became something you learned to manage carefully, even privately. You may have learned to measure your desires against other people's needs, against circumstances, against timing, against responsibility. You learned to pause before reaching, to check whether your wanting was reasonable, to scan for who might be affected if you leaned further into it. This checking became automatic. It felt mature. It felt considerate. It felt like the right thing to do. And so guilt became the signal, not a punishment, but a boundary. A way of keeping you aligned with what felt safe, acceptable, and contained. When a deeper longing surfaced, guilt stepped in gently and reminded you of everything you already had. Everything you should be thankful for. Everything that could be disrupted if you asked for more than what was already being held. Over time, this creates a quiet tension. A life that looks complete from the outside, but feels slightly compressed on the inside. Not unhappy, not empty, just narrower than what you sense might be possible. And because the guilt is subtle, because it feels reasonable, you may not recognize it as something that weighs on you. It blends into your sense of responsibility, into your identity as someone who copes, who manages, who doesn't demand too much. The cost of this isn't immediate. It accumulates slowly, kind of internal dimming. A habit of dismissing your own curiosity before it fully forms. A reflex to minimize your desires before they grow strong enough to be felt clearly. You don't stop wanting altogether. You just learn to keep that wanting quiet, tucked away, so it doesn't disturb the balance you've worked hard to maintain. This guilt often carries a moral tone, as if wanting more is a personal failure rather than a natural response to being alive. As if desire itself is evidence that you are unsatisfied in a way you shouldn't be. But this interpretation misses something important. It ignores the context in which this guilt learned to speak, the environment where wanting had consequences, where contentment was rewarded and longing was complicated. This isn't about greed. It's about expansion meeting caution, about growth brushing up against loyalty, responsibility, or fear of loss. Wanting more doesn't mean rejecting what you have. But if you learned early on that wanting led to instability, it makes sense that your system would respond with restraint rather than enthusiasm. Nothing is wrong with you for feeling this way. There is a coherence to it. A logic that has protected you from disappointment, from conflict, from being seen as difficult or demanding. This guilt has been doing its job. It has kept things steady, predictable, manageable. Seeing it this way changes the tone of the conversation inside you. The guilt no longer needs to be fought or justified. It doesn't need to be proven wrong. It can simply be understood as a signal shaped by history rather than truth. A reminder of what once felt risky, not a verdict on what you deserve. You don't have to act on your wanting for it to be valid. You don't have to pursue it, explain it, or make it practical. Wanting can exist without becoming a demand. It can be present without being indulged or suppressed. Simply allowing it to be noticed, without judgment, already loosens the tightness around it. There may be moments when the guilt rises quickly, when a glimpse of something more meaning, more alignment, more aliveness, brushes against your awareness. The familiar voice responds with reasons, comparisons, reminders of obligation. You may notice how automatic this is, how fast it happens, how little space there seems to be between desire and self-correction. That space doesn't need to be forced open, doesn't need to become a project. It's just noticing that the guilt arrived and recognizing why it learned too can soften its grip, not remove it. It's quieted enough that it no longer feels like the only voice in the room. There is no conclusion required here, no decision to be made. No declaration about what you will or won't want going forward. Life doesn't ask for that kind of clarity all at once. It unfolds in smaller recognitions. For now, it may be enough to let the wanting exist without apology, to let the guilt sit beside it rather than on top of it, to acknowledge both as parts of your experience shaped by time, by care, by adaptation. And in that gentle coexistence, unresolved, unpressured, you remain whole.